Uh-huh. Mm, that's good. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and enemies and comrades, I hope you're doing well wherever you are. This is Kenya Revolutionary for another session, quick session for the day. I know it's Friday, so you're probably in the pub, enjoying your evening. Una nini yo? You're basically having fun with your friends. I'm assuming so, or you're at home sleeping. But anyway, today I want to touch on a very simple topic. It seems simple, but it's very complicated. It's actually loaded, a loaded question that requires the collective to actually answer it fully. But I will give my 2 cents in this topic, as you see, is how do we change the corrupt political system in Kenya? How do we change the political system, the corrupt political system in Kenya? Now, politics, as you know, politics is all about power, okay? It's how a society is structured as far as power is concerned. How do we manage this power, this sovereign power that the people willingly and through their own volition, they donate this power to individuals in order for them to kind of represent us, okay? Right? So how do we do so? We can all agree that the system in place in Kenya as it stands right now, it's corrupt. It's corrupt to the core. The three arms of government, whether it's the judiciary, executive, and the legislative body, are both insufficient, deficient. The power that has been vested to them by the people have been usurped by the executive, the head of the executive, who's the head of the state, who is responsible administratively to carry out matters that we care about. Okay? Ideally, these three branches of government should be independent, but we all know that whoever sits as the president of Kenya usually runs things, okay? Usually takes power, and their influence, goes beyond just the executive branch. They try to influence the judiciary. They basically buy off or intimidate or blackmail the legislative arm of government. So you find that everything that the head of state wants, he gets, as in the case of Ruto today, okay? Now, Ruto is not the only one who is guilty of this. So let's not play around with this. We all know that. Uhuru, when he was in power, he did the same thing, okay? And he did it aggressively, not even making it a secret, through intimidation. And I mean, remember the Supreme Court ruling before the second ruling regarding the elections, whether elections were supposed to be conducted, the rerun or whatever the case is. And Justice, is it something? I forgot her name. The lady with the short hair, who her bodyguard lost his life the previous day before the final judgment was to be made. So it's a glimpse into how dangerously flawed our system is, given the fact that whoever sits at the on the presidency or the executive, as the head of the executive, violates the constitution as far as the boundaries in which they should operate under. Okay, so now we see that the whole system is a sham. Okay, we see even the IBC that is supposed to be independent. It's in the name, Independent Electoral, Boundaries Commission, whatever the case is. Okay, it's also not independent anymore. It's fully under William Samoei Ruto's command. Okay, so the question is, if elections, okay, as many of you get excited about, is one of the avenue, okay, the main avenue that historically Kenyans choose, to remove the president or remove a certain representative or remove any public official that they're not happy with, if that is already compromised, the body that is constitutionally mandated to undertake this whole process is compromised by the executive. Do you honestly believe that if you go line up on August 2027, hoping to remove Ruto, do you honestly think that you're going to remove him from power? The answer is a glaring no, you are not going to succeed. Why? Because the system under which we rely upon to carry out this democratic process has been compromised in favor of the person who sits at State House. You understand? That's why when majority of you get excited about a certain candidate, oh, we are going to tunaenda kutoa Ruto, whatever, I look at you as if you've been smoking something very strong. But before we get started, before I start offering the solutions, let's get through the formalities. If this is your first time here, my name is Kenyan Revolutionary. I talk about politics, Kenyan politics, and world politics as it relates to Kenya. So if you like that kind of content, please take a moment and subscribe, share, like, comment, and hit the notification bell. If you've already subscribed, you know the first order of business is to do what? Hit that subscribe button. I'm on again. All right, let's address what we're addressing now. So now I've highlighted to you the present context situation of Kenya. Historically, we've known since Jomo, like I said, Jomo Kenyatta was never voted. He never faced any elections. This guy was, handed power by the British, and he ruled until his death in 1970 something. I forgot, when Moi took over, and Moi ruled for 24 years. And we all know the elections that happened during that 24-year period, where Moi would basically buy off everyone and everybody and loot and renew and control, or rig himself back to power for 24 years until 2002, when people had enough and we put in Kibaki. Kibaki was the only democratically elected president where majority of Kenyans actually voted him in. Okay, Raila was another one in 2007, but he never actually, we know what happened. Kibaki refused to give up power and swore himself in at midnight with the help of Martha Karua and others who are now preaching to us, lecturing to us about democratic principles and fair electoral process. Okay, now any other president from Kibaki's second term to the present day, they've never won fair and square. Okay, so now there's two distinct routes or methods that I hear a lot of people talk about, in which we can bring change, where we can undo the system through. Like I mentioned, the first one is already a defeated one. Going through the ballot into 2027 is nothing more than a coronation for Ruto to get into presidency. Okay? The second one is the popular revolution. That is, we saw a glimpse of it in June 25th, 2024, when we occupied the parliament. We, the people, wanted to go to the State House and remove Ruto, but thanks God to the Wakina Hanefa and Boniface Mwangi, the fake activists who are urging us not to go to State House and go back home. And we know what happened after that in Githurai and many other places where people were gunned down and have been lost ever since then. Okay? So here it is. I'm presenting to you two things. We can all agree. Yes, we are going to elections. Unfortunately, majority of Kenyans still believe that there's a chance of removing Ruto through the electoral process in 2027. Okay? It hasn't even occurred in their mind. They are the sovereign people who can actually decide not only to wait till 2027, but remove Ruto right now as it stands. through popular revolution. It's in the Constitution, because the Constitution, the first article of the 2010 Kenyan Constitution, says that we've delegated these powers to these folks: the judicial branch, the legislative branch, and the executive branch. But the power remains with the people. We can exercise it indirectly or directly. As it stands, we are exercising it indirectly through these representatives. But we are at a point where these representatives have proven beyond reasonable doubt that they cannot represent us. They've refused to represent our interests. They've refused to act on our behalf. In fact, they're violating us. So it is incumbent upon us as the people, sovereign people of Kenya, to exercise this sovereign power directly. So the disconnect is always, what does it mean, or what does exercising this power directly actually entails? How does it look like? It looks like September 25th, 2024, where the people stand up in masses. Majority of us, as we know, we are a constitutional democracy. So the power lies with the power, majoritarian rule. So if majority of us Kenyans get up and say, hey, we are going to the State House and we are going to remove Ruto, we are going to declare from the rooftops at the State House that Ruto has to resign, because we are going to take away his legitimacy, symbolically and in actuality. Physically tell him it's over, you no longer represent the state of Kenya, the Republic of Kenya. Okay, that's another way. Now, let's interrogate this second this second method of taking out Ruto, or changing the system through popular revolution, because that is what seems to be the reliable option. There's an option number 3, but I will get to it to the end of the video. I won't keep this video long. I'll keep kind of short, maybe 30 minutes or something like that, or less. But I want to get to the point very quickly so you can understand what I'm trying to derive here. Now, the popular revolution part, as we saw in September 25th, 2024, where Boniface Mwangi, Hanefa, Raila Odinga afterwards stopped this movement, the general feeling that we were supposed to go take out Ruto through popular revolution, take him out. We already did that with the parliament, the whole legislative body. Okay, some might make a argument that this protest in was it September or June 25th? I'm sorry, I'm confusing the dates. Okay, the Gen Z movement that happened 2024. Remember that. That's what I'm referring to. Some may argue that this was a purple revolution engineered by, if you know the not purple revolution, but a color revolution. Color revolution just basically refers to a CIA-led revolution that usually takes place in countries that the globalists want to change the leadership. Okay, they call it color revolution. That's why you call it, some of it is yellow, orange movement in Ukraine, the purple revolution in was it in Iran, or the Iran that they attempted during the Arab Spring in Egypt and other countries. Okay, so you can make an argument for that, but let's just stick to it. Let's assume Kenyans were behind it. Okay, the only thing, the main question that I would like to raise here, because I want you to think, this is about thinking. Okay, we have to think deeply why things are not working, or things are working, or why things are the way they are. Okay, so here's the question that I want to pose to a lot of Kenyans. Okay, especially the Gen Zs who are actually actively in the ground, participating in every political activity. Okay, what went wrong? I'm not talking about what went wrong during the Gen Z movement. I'm talking about after the derailment of the general feeling that we were supposed to go take out Ruto. Because we already did we already took out the mace from the from the parliament. So parliament legitimately has no power. We succeeded in occupying the parliament, the legislative body. But why didn't we succeed in taking out Ruto? What stopped us? And I want you to think beyond Raila's interference in all this. Okay? Yes, it plays a part. He worked with the governor of Nairobi, hire goons to go intimidate the young folks that were on the streets. Absolutely, this is a very good question that Musyoka is asking, that's where I actually you're taking me where I want to go. He poses the question: can a popular revolution work in an ethnically mobilized population like Kenya, in addition to classism perpetuated by people like David D? How do we dismantle ethnic mobilization? Absolutely. And that's where I was going with this. I was just taking you slowly there. And again, he asked, Kimani Chungwa was saying Gen Z were carrying water bottles, meaning they belong to the middle class. Absolutely. Yes. He was saying that Gen Z ni wale watu kukunywa water bottles at kwenda KFC. I guess KFC is in Kenya, it's like those people who are middle class kids or people are the ones who ate KFC or whatever the case is. So I get that. But that's a very good question. How do you mobilize a population that is very divided, ethnically divided? Okay. Here's how. Now, ask yourself this. That's why I want us to think. Okay, that's a very good question, and I'm going to answer it. But I want to pose this question first, so that we can diagnose what really transpired in, was it June 25th, 2024, the Gen Z movement. How did it work? Why did the Gen Z go to the streets? How did they mobilize? Because I'm assuming it wasn't just one tribe that went to that that Gen Z movement. Okay, what drove them into the streets? How did they organize, and how did they successfully occupy the parliament? That's question number one. That's the first question that I want you to answer. You don't have to answer it. It's basically a rhetoric question, okay? But I'm just trying to kind of give you, walk you through this step by step so we can understand what needs to be done, and which will, in fact, answer your question. What really galvanized, brought people together? Who are the people who are behind this Gen Z movement that came together, and how did they mobilize to a point where they successfully hit the ground in numbers, large numbers, and may I add, to a point where they were unstoppable and they successfully occupied parliament? Now, this has been a debate of some sorts, because I suspect, this is my suspicion, and I might be wrong. You might continue. You might correct me on this. I feel like there was a faction of the political class who did not align with Ruto's administration, who played a pivotal role in organizing, funding, financing, mobilizing this youth to take part in this movement to force for it to be successful. Okay, that's why I've always mentioned that you have to listen to what Jimmy Wanjigi was saying You know, when she was in that lady Ngugi's podcast, when he said, "Hey, I won't mind or feel bad if they accuse me of funding this Gen Z movement." Remember, previous to that podcast appearance, he was meeting Omondi, what's his name? This comedian who's running around in KICC, Sisi Kwa Sisi movement. I forgot, Eric Omondi, whatever I think his name is, who was actually also being part of, very active, aligning himself with the Gen Zs, who is also a mobilizer, social mobilizer. Okay? Understand that? Okay? So, Jimmy Wanjigi, among others, I suspect even some people aligned. I wouldn't be surprised if, maybe Uhuru Kenyatta might be behind it or some other people who played a part. And this was to send a message to Ruto, basically. Because if you think about it, the politics before that, Ruto was getting into a lot of confrontation. His government, remember that time when he said that the Kenyatas need to pay more taxes? And I'm not blaming this squarely on Kenyatas. They have a part to play, but it wasn't just them. It was more than them. Like I said, the oligarchs, the home guards, who are not happy with Ruto. Because Ruto, remember, you have to understand the psychology of Ruto. Ruto is somebody who came to power not only to grab power for the sake of it, but to grab power to enrich himself. So once he got the power, he started off, trying to get even, not trying to get even, but trying to flex his muscle. Okay? And he was making the wrong moves, even in the international stage. Remember, there was a time when Ruto met with there was an Iranian president, Iranian president stopped in Kenya, which was a very no-no. The American ambassador had to summon Ruto and talk to him and tell him, hey, listen, if you're going to align yourself with the non-alliance, the BRICS people, you better watch out. Remember when there was African summit in Russia, in Moscow, where Ruto was supposed to go to that summit, but the American ambassador reached out to Ruto and told him, hey, where are we? You want to align yourself with the BRICS? He had to send Alfred Mutua to go to Moscow in that summit. Remember that time? And Ruto was talking about, this is a multipolar world. He was talking this language of the BRICS. So it wasn't sitting well with the colonialist, with the Western globalist, okay, trying to do business with the BRICS. Okay? So combine that. That's what I'm telling you. Remember the famous news clip that I played in my previous video of Jimmy Wanjigi and Mama Ngina, who were in a church. Okay? And Mama Ngina was saying, kama unanikujia nikujie. Because at that time, Ruto was maintaining at mpaka wakina, the Kenyatas have to pay their fair share of taxes. Okay? And Jimmy got up into that church and said, ukianza to target the Kenyatas, unacheza na a live wire. Remember that? You're playing with a live wire. Remember that? Okay? So, after that, even before that, let me see that. You're saying something. We can compare notes with Tanzania. Those revolution aborted due to jailing of Tundu Lissu, although ethnically neutral. Tanzania used to use the police state and spy network to manage the population. Absolutely, that's true. That's very true. And the police network and the intelligence is happening in Kenya. We actually started that before. That is actually what Ruto did after the 2010. After the Gen Z movement. And I was getting there. I'm just trying to paint a picture as to how and why the Gen Z movement was actually successful. Okay? And I've always maintained that the Raila Odinga, along with Kenyatta and Jimmy Wanjigis and other billionaires who are not happy with how Ruto was ruling the country, because he's ruling, he's not governing. Okay? I think they played a part in the financing the organization, the mobilizing of this Gen Z movement. Okay? Because if there's anyone who knows or has experience in mobilization of people to go to protest, is the Azimio guys. But here's the thing, they could not have the Azimio face stamped into this movement. They could not have this movement called an Azimio protest against Ruto's presidency, because there was actually an agreement in place up to that point, which was that the Azimio folks were to have a ceasefire. They could not go to the streets because the NADCO talks were in place already. Part of the conditions, the preconditions to the sit down or during the NADCO discussions was that Azimio was to stop the Maandamano immediately so that they can have these talks. So if Azimio was to come out overtly and start protesting using these Gen Zs, that will be a direct violation of the pre-agreement conditions that they had entered and signed with the president, with the government of the day, that they were not supposed to do that. Okay? So what these Azimio folks is, remember, again, I'm taking you to the quotes that these guys were saying. Remember Duale, who was the CS of internal security or whatever the case? And he said on Spice FM saying that he receives briefs every day and he can tell unequivocally, okay, that the Kenyatas were directly financing the Azimio protests. That's why you saw Maina Njenga coming into the fold. Maina Njenga is the right-hand man, the guy who does the dirty work for Uhuru Kenyatta, okay, the Mungiki guy, okay. So these guys, since the Azimio had already signed a pact, a NADCO agreement to stop the protest in order for them to start negotiating for positions, okay? And these talks were actually stalling. If you remember, they were stalling. There were two of them. The first one was led by Otiende Amolo, George, what's his name? George, I forgot his last name. Okay. Now Akina Kalwale was part of the first one. Then it failed. It broke down. Then they went back to Maandamano. Then the second one was formed, where Kalonzo was representing the Azimio folks. Kimani Chungwa was representing the Neo. Aaron Cheriot was part of it. Hii ya mwisho ambao they agreed upon. In fact, they agreed upon it. The president signed it, and Raila signed it. But the thing is, Ruto was not implementing the agreement because these guys wanted to go change the constitution. That's why you can hear, even was it yesterday or today, they were talking about the NADCO never was implemented. Okay? So anyway, Mr. Yokai saying, could the Gen Z Occupy Parliament have been organized by NIS for Ruto to get rid of Gachagua? Remember Gachagua beforehand confronted his boss about giving bad advice? I don't think so. I don't think so. I'll tell you why I don't think so. Why would Ruto take such a risk just to get rid of Gachagua? Why would he do that? Besides, like I said, Gachagua is not really the division, the difference between Gachagua and Ruto. I don't think it's real. Like I said, if it was real, Gachagua would be in prison right now. And the decision for Gachagua to be able to run for public office would have been finalized by now. The court would have ruled that Gachagua is not eligible to run for any public office based on the fact that he was impeached and his previous, corruption cases stretching back to the Moi era. Okay? But like I said, the most glaring evidence that Gachagua is actually not against Ruto is Gachagua, the easy shenanigans about he gets caught up in the church. He makes astounding statements about Ruto's, basically calling Ruto a criminal and all this stuff, nothing ever happens to him. Let anyone else say something about Ruto and see what happens. They will get rid of him, take him to the Ninio. You see what I'm saying? So it's not real. But let me go back to what works and what might work. Okay? So let me quickly go to this video. So what I'm trying to say is this, and not so many words, is this. The organization and the mobilization and the financing of the Gen Zs was backed by the very a faction of the political class of Kenya, due to the fact that they wanted to force the president into acquiescing into their demands. Remember, you understand? Because there was a gridlock, okay, a deadlock, okay. No one was making progress in the talks between Azimio and Ruto's regime during those NADCO. So when they finally talked and they agreed and it was signed, okay, Ruto still did not want to implement this NADCO process of NADCO, okay? Remember, Opio and I, who came out and say that, okay, if they do not agree or implement the NADCO report, okay, which included the changing of the Constitution of Kenya, if they don't agree, remember, he was saying that's with Raila Odinga, hii Kenya itaendelea, okay? And the first step into the implementation of the NADCO report was changing the electoral hiyo laws, ambayo wakaanza kuleta hii mambo ya sijui voting, sijui nini, mobile voting, mobile stations and all this stuff. What is it called? Whatever amendment law. I forgot the name of the law. That was the first one on the agenda. And the next step of the agenda was to change the constitution, which would require a referendum, and that's where they were stuck. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say, to go back to the reasons as to what gives it a successful, what made it a successful Gen Z protest to the Occupy Parliament thing. It was financed and supported by a faction of the very political, corrupt system class of Kenya. Okay? So, but they did it in a way without stamping the name of the Azimio so that people could look at it as a purely Gen Z movement. Because the reason why I say that is this. If Gen Zs were not mobilized, financed by a faction of the political class, what is stopping them from doing that right now and removing Ruto and the parliament? I'll repeat the question again, very slowly. If this Gen Z movement that succeeded in June 25th, 2024, occupies parliament, which succeeded, if they were not funded, secretly funded, supported, and backed by a faction of the political class, okay? If that's the case, if this was a purely organic people standing up and rising up against Ruto, if that's the case, why is it not happening again right now? Here's my theory why. It is because the very people who are behind the organization, the protestation, the mobilization, the financing of that movement, they turned, once they were guaranteed a position, by forcing Ruto to agree to their demands. Hiyo mkate yao, hiyo nusu mkate. Once they got what they wanted, peep this. Okay, listen carefully. Once they agreed to their demands, wakaingia kwa government, wakina Raila. And guess what? Once the agreement came to fruition, now they started working against the what? The Gen Zs. And they started labeling the Gen Zs what? This is a Kikuyu revolt. This is not a Gen Z. This is not to a Kenya. Now it turned into a Kikuyu uprising. Remember? So what happened is this, basically. Raila, along with, listen to me. Oh, Lord, this is coming together now. As I talk about it, it comes together. Listen to me very carefully. Raila was with Kenyatta where after the handshake, right? To save so-called, hey, woo-wee. Let me be very quick because my Nino might be dying. Listen to me very carefully. Raila agreed to enter into a handshake with Uhuru Kenyatta in 2017-2018 with the understanding that Uhuru Kenyatta will guarantee him the presidency in 2022. Raila, knowing that Uhuru Kenyatta's 2017 or 2018 victory was his last tenure, last term in office. So Uhuru Kenyatta was not going to be eligible to run for presidency again. So Raila came to Uhuru, or Uhuru came to Raila, or they just agreed to come together and sat down and told Uhuru, I won this election. I know that I won. And Raila won. We know that. It's not up for a debate, okay? He won. It's not up for a debate. Raila won in 2017. In fact, the Kenyan people demanded and even Walim swore him in as their people's president. Follow me with this. So Raila, okay, being mjanja and wanting all this to be greedy, being greedy, he agreed to enter into some kind of contract, a handshake contract. Because remember, we were told that when he went to meet Uhuru Kenyatta in that meeting, oh my goodness, my Nino is dying. So let me be very quick. That he was only with his lawyer and Winnie when they were going to, his lawyer Paul Mwangi and Winnie, when they were going to meet Uhuru and his people to sign the handshake in 2018. So the deal was, Raila told Uhuru, I will let you be the president. I won, but I will let you be the president. But come 2022, you have to support me and guarantee me the presidency using the state apparatus, state instruments, intelligence, and manpower to guarantee me a victory in 2022 against whoever is going to run in 2022. The problem is the problem is Uhuru already had a pact with Ruto, who was his choice anyway. Okay? He was playing Raila here. That's why you hear Babu Owino saying the long con game. So nakumbuka kina Babu Owino akisema the long con game. So anyway, let me just walk you through this very quickly. Uhuru was playing Raila, akasema oh mzee ni tamaa bin tamaa. Okay, that's what he wants. All right. But Uhuru didn't care because he just wanted to finish his second term. So what Uhuru did was to choreograph this fake beef with Ruto. But remember, he already walisha signed deal now Ruto kitambo before Raila's handshake. That kumi yangu, kumi yako. So when 2022 came, Uhuru Kenyatta could not show his face that he betrayed Raila. But I'll tell you why. Proof that Raila was betrayed in 2022 by Uhuru Kenyatta. I'll tell you why. So, we went to 2022, Raila kashindwa. Right? Ruto ameshinda. He's the president. And like I usually tell you guys, there is no way Uhuru Kenyatta, as powerful as he was, a dictatorial president with power in his palms, whether it's the army, police force, and intelligence, will hand over power to Ruto if he really actually hated Ruto. So he has to honor what he already agreed with Ruto. Kumi yangu, kumi yako. Raila was just being playing. So Raila, but Uhuru had to play ball. So when Raila pulled off his normal nonsense, maandamano, to force the government of the day to agree to his demands, Uhuru had to play along. So Uhuru supported Raila financially. That's why Duale was telling us through Spice FM, telling us that I have evidence through the intelligence that the Kenyatta family is financing these Azimio protests. Remember, he was saying Azimio protests, right? I have evidence. Okay, so Uhuru had to support Raila in this mandamano because he didn't want to seem as though he didn't want Raila to suspect that he actually betrayed Raila by handing over power to Ruto. Because there's no way. That's why you hear Uhuru crying every day saying you had the presidency. Even before that, he was saying, we always win, but we don't have the system. But this time we have the system to Uhuru Kenyatta, so we are going to win. But that's why Uhuru was crying the other day, 2 days ago, saying, Uhuru, you have the system, but these people still stole and you still gave power to Ruto. So listen to me. So the evidence, so Uhuru kept on pretending that he's backing Raila in this mandamano. That's why he was financing it. That's why it explains why Maina Njenga came into the frame. Because remember, Raila, when he started his mandamano zake, they were not successful. It was only in some places, not even in Nyanza. There was only in some parts of Nyanza, and that was it. Okay? And some parts of Nairobi. Okay? And it wasn't ilikuwa ishiki. Hata kajaribu Mombasa ilikuwa ishiki. Then Raila had to reach out to Maina Njenga. Maina Njenga is Uhuru's man. So basically Raila was starting to Kenyatta kamwambia watu wa mkiti wako. That's why you saw wakina Gaucho walikuwa na kunywa damu huko ndio Jivanji Garden, whatever the case was, wale wanapiganga makelele. Remember that? So that's when ikaanza kubamba tena. Hiyo maandamano ikaanza kubamba. Okay? And then we saw what happened in Kodele and other folks. You see, so all this time, even though Kenyatta was helping Raila Odinga, he was helping him just to save face, so that Raila could not suspect that he actually betrayed him by giving up power to Ruto. So here it is, very quickly. Let me take this. I hope you're following. So remember ile siku when Raila started hii maneno yake ya kwenda the African Union. Remember that? At the African Union. Before he went to the debates, a few weeks before he went to the debates, there was an ODM women meeting, okay, in Kasarani, I believe. And Raila said something that was very, very important, that shocked a lot of people. He said this: wale watu they always steal from me. Wanaiba. Basically, he didn't stop there. He was basically saying, insinuating, these people, they always steal me. Basically, he was saying that he knows that he has been played. And he was referring to the 2022 elections, because the agreement was, Uhuru, I'm letting you become president in 2017 because you lost, but I'm letting you finish your term. Then Rudisha Mkono in 2022, so I become the president. So in that meeting, he was very angry, and he said, they always steal from me. These people, who was he referring to? Ruto was already the president. He already knows. And listen, at that point, he was already on a broad-based government, because Ruto was supporting him to go to AU. So when he was saying, who was he referring to? He was basically referring to Uhuru Kenyatta and his cohorts, who he had promised him to become president in 2022, but did not. So guess what? Guess what? Before that, what had happened? The Gen Z movement. Yeah? Listen to me. The Gen Z movement happened. Sindio, who, like I told you, who was behind the Gen Z movement? Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga's people, Jimmy Wajigi, Eric Omondi mobilizing people. These are Raila people, okay? Okay? So, as soon as that parliament is invaded, okay, by the Gen Zs, Raila akaamua kwenda kushikana na nani? With Ruto. Akasema, I'm supporting Ruto. And after that, Raila and his goons and his mobilizing team, street team, wakaanza to attack the Gen Zs with the help of that police force of Kenya to neutralize the Gen Zs. So this was a payback for Raila because he knew the people who were financing these Gen Zs were the very people who were supposed to guarantee him the victory in 2022. So Raila was like, so let me go align myself with Ruto and get whatever I wanted from the get-go, which was power, some cutting, some shares, red carpet, or whatever you always want. Everything that you always wanted. Okay? And I will stop the mandamano by using my street team. Like I told you, Raila got a network Kali all over across the Kenya. So that's what he used. Okay? That's what Raila used as a way to stop these Gen Zs. And you see, so, because these were the oligarchs, the home guards, wanted to take out Ruto. They want to check Ruto. But anyway, my gadget is dying. I have to stop here, but I'll bring up part 2. I'll bring up part 2 tomorrow about how we could change the political system in Kenya through the popular revolution. Like I say, the popular revolution in Kenya is not only is a bit too complicated. We have to have it's more than the nice dog. Yeah. So I'll bring you guys the second part of this video where we shall revise that as we talk about how to revolutionize the corrupt political system in Kenya and how we can actually mobilize ethnically divided nation. How social media, what we're doing right here and other pages, can actually play a pivotal role to bringing real change. But anyway, join me into that. I'll come next time. Probably maybe later on this evening I might come and have another one. But anyway, share, like, subscribe, comment, do all the good stuff. I will come with another video session and we'll talk about it. Peace and blessings about.